Yizkor is a service which brings us together to remember all the good and the love and the tenderness which has been bestowed upon us by our dear ones, parents, spouses, children, family members, friends. It allows us to recall all that which is beautiful about how those who loved us always sought to sustain us, to nurture us, to make our lives easier. Yeah, indeed, that becomes our responsibility too, to love those within our family and to love the family of humanity. Just as they did everything for us, so too is it not a responsibility of ours to do that which can preserve the lives of all. I guess what I'm saying is that it's always have been an important lesson to do what we can for others. More than 30 years ago, an interesting movie was shown around the country. The movie was entitled Ghost. You remember it? 30 years ago, I found that hard to believe. Starring Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, a couple who were very much in love with one another. Patrick Swayze was killed early in the movie, but he continued to play an important role in this movie, in this film, Ghost, because he always felt it should be his responsibility as long as possible to nurture and take care of and sustain the woman he loved, in this particular case, Demi Moore. And to do so during a period of time while he still may have the strength to do it, though he wasn't seen, nor did anyone know of him at this point. And ultimately he knew, as all people, that he would fade away. But in the meantime, he would watch over and endeavor to protect this wonderful woman as long as he could. Indeed, the ghost who loved his dear one had to fade away, just like each of us and all of our dear ones have. It makes us ask the question, is there a possibility that the ones who nurtured us when we were alive, are they able to some way and in some form be aware of our presence? Do they still watch over, not in ghost form, but in a soul form, the loved ones? Do they have any contact with us? Or conversely, do we have any contact with them? It's hard to believe in any other way other than memory. The memory of what they did and brings us together here in order to bestow our own respect upon those who did everything within their power to do whatever they could to love us, to sustain us. Memory, because they watched over us. Judaism has long been interested in this particular question, of course, just as all religions have. The Jewish people, however, have always been known to be somewhat rationalistic. And so therefore, to have a faith that there is a relationship with someone who's gone makes it difficult to ascertain or to imagine. Yet there are those who may believe that in some manner our loved ones gone from life watch over us. There's an interesting book that was written many years ago, a London-born Jewish man who went to the Hebrew Union College in the United States and was ordained a rabbi in 1936. His name was Joshua Trachtenberg. And he wrote a notable book called Jewish Magic and Mysticism. And if you're able to pick it up sometime, it's an interesting read. Within the book, Trachtenberg wrote fascinating stories told by the Jewish people who believe that the spirits or the souls of the dead remain watching over us. There is even a selection in the book of a group of ghosts, deceased individuals who at midnight on Yom Kippur Eve held a service in the synagogue. Now this seems, of course, strange to us. But are they able to watch over us and bless us? Are they the ones who have gone from life everlasting in some form? How do we recognize their presence? Is it the Spirit? What is the Spirit? Trachtenberg wrote in his book that there were three aspects of the soul, three different names of the Spirit. One name was Ruach. Ruach in Hebrew literally means wind. Interesting to think about the Spirit, which according to Trachtenberg somehow hovered with the deceased once the person died and forever. Ruach really means wind or breathe. Fascinating. In a period like this, when COVID so concerns us, to breathe life. It's not any different than the beginning of Genesis when it says, and God breathed life into the nostrils of Adam. That we derive life in many ways by, thank God, the ability to stay alive and breathe, and the breath of life that comes from people who love us, and the memory of what they did if they are no longer here, that somehow gives us a new breath of life in terms of how we might be able to live our lives. And maybe one of the great teachings that our parents or grandparents had bestowed upon us was, how do you live your life in a way that you'll remember me? You'll remember the way we taught you. And so therefore, I hope you might be, in Yiddish, a feiner Mensch. A feiner Mensch is a wonderful term in Yiddish. You know what a Mensch is, of course. Someone who does good, does it from the very depths of his soul. A feiner Mensch is a fine human being. And the mystics taught us that there are some people who come into this world, and we are fortunate if we have been touched by them, that they have an ability to have like a garment enwrapped, a fine garment enwrapped around their souls. This is a feiner Mensch. You don't meet many people like this, that there is such kindness, such incredible concern about the next person. This is a feiner Mensch. Was my father, was my mother a feiner Mensch? If so, then what do I do in order to live my life to enhance that which was expressed by then? Now that's the image of a person who gets our attention, as someone who's a feiner Mensch. The three different names for soul, as taught in Hebrew, was one I already mentioned, the ruach. The next is the nephesh. Nephesh is a word for soul, too. And according to Trachtenberg and Jewish mysticism, the nephesh travels back and forth between the home in which he lived and the grave in which he was buried, back and forth for 7 days, until he, too, would fade into oblivion. But a need to be at home with the person or the people he loved. That was the nephesh. The neshama, you may know that term. The neshama is referred to as the soul which upon death emerges to the heavens and joins God. And if we know anyone who has been called in Yiddish or in Hebrew, a gute neshama, you know that term? If you're a Litvak, it would be a gita neshama. In Russian, a gute neshama, someone who's got it, someone who's got a soul. That's what we think about when we think about the people who loved us the most. To have this gute neshama. Several times I have told a story, excuse me for doing it again. I promised someone in a way that I would do so with regards to the last moments of my mother's death. Judy and I went to Minneapolis when she was passing away. My sisters and brothers, we all took our respective turn in helping her. And she was pretty ill by the time we came. And I played beautiful liturgical music and cantorial music for her. She loved listening to cantorial music. And then for some reason she felt it necessary, as her breath was fading away, to remember her mother, my grandmother, who came to live with us after my grandfather died. She lived in our home for 20 years and was a wonderful presence for all of us. And she began to talk about her mother and how she always was so close to her. They were in the kitchen together making dinner. I don't know why they didn't get in an argument, but they made dinner every night together in the kitchen. And she said, "My mother was such a light." And I said, "Mom, I really believe that when it's time to go, that your mother is going to take your hand and be a source of light for you in every way." And she had been particularly irritated the last few days, but hearing that, she smiled. And it seemed to relax her, and she fell asleep. 2 hours later, she called to us. Judy and I went into the room, and she said, the light. I want the light." And so I went to her bedside and I turned the light on at her bedside. But she was still disturbed. And she said, no, the light. So then I turned the light on her dresser. No, that's not it. I want the light. And then I turned the overhead light on. Once again, she was upset. "I want the light." I said, "Mom, every light in the room is on." And she was quiet for a moment, and she fell back to sleep. An hour later, she passed away. And then I only realized the possibility that the light for which she called was the light that some people see just prior to death, an opportunity for goodness to take their hand. And maybe the catalyst was, "Mom, I think Grandma will take your hand, and she was a light," you had said. And that light was that which sustained her hopeful to return to family. I had told someone who recently had passed away this story, and the person said to me, "My mom and my dad always taught me that in the end we would be together again. Someday, somehow, some way, I don't understand it, that we will be together again." When we go to funerals, we are able to offer whatever support we can in a mystical way. Just a couple of examples that you know. That at the end of the funeral, it became incumbent upon family members and friends to place earth on top of the casket, rather than total strangers doing it all. Wouldn't it be better that we who knew her or him, loved her or him, that we place this upon? Some people said, but I can't throw dirt on the person I love. And yet what Jewish tradition teaches is that this is not dirt. This is earth. This is a blanket of earth that we rest upon our loved one so that they will always feel a sense of peace. When someone we love is asleep at night and we rest a blanket upon them for a good night's rest, this is the ultimate means by which we can say goodbye to a dear one and place earth, a blanket of earth, on top of them, with every hope that we will continue to remember what was precious in their lives. Or sometimes we'll come to a cemetery and we'll see that on the tombstone there is a rock. And you think, someone came to visit. I wonder who came to visit. But a rock is a symbol of something substantive. One of the names for God is Tzur Yisrael, Rock of Israel. And a stone placed upon the tombstone or nearby is a reference to our belief that I will always be like a rock, despite the fact that I miss you. I'll always try to do that which you taught me. I will promise to be a rock, as hard as it is, because life has to go on after our dear ones breathe the last. And so I close with this poem I wrote as we remember those dear ones. And as we ask the question, where are they now? Those whom we love but are no longer here, are they not in our thoughts? Something stirs a memory and then they suddenly reappear. We close our eyes, yet in the darkness which abides, we see in their faces a light or a ray. It is as if they watch over us, and before the Almighty, on our behalf do they pray. Can it be that they exist in some manner and watch over us? They there, we here, giving us direction and encouraging us to battle our problems and try not to fear. For they would want us to live and rejoice again with strength to persevere, somehow we can still feel their presence and know that they offer assurance when we are lost and we're alone. Their very presence in our lives is like some kind of insurance, which bolsters us when in trouble and picks us up when we are low. It helps us to know we will not falter when life deals us a blow. It is true that at times we can hear them and close our eyes and see their smile. Remember that what moved them and how they interacted with others according to their own unique style. We miss them now. The void their departure created leaves in its wake a pain. Life without him, without her, is difficult, and not being at our sides, life has never been the same. Yet they would want us to be strong. We know that they would be angry if we could not break out in song. For their lives were a celebration, and together we had joy. And the love they took with them is not totally gone now, for we are here to remember them. And that love did we employ. So if indeed we hear them calling our name, in our heart, would that be saying, remember the love in our souls that we always did proclaim? We rejoice together. Our life did we hold aloft. And now that they are gone, we remember the tenderness that our love was so soft. It was good. We created a love which always endeared us to strengthen you. Through God and through the good and the bad, and from the year to the year, from one year to the next, do we start anew. But I will do so with strength, my loved ones, remembering you. And may you, on this day, be sealed with love and health and goodness as you have the pleasure of bestowing that goodness upon all you know in honor of the ones you love. Amen.